begin, I want to acknowledge some very important people that are here today. The first one up in the front row here is Barbara Jimenez. Barbara is the regional manager for the Central and South regions in San Diego. You'll be hearing about the South region today. And she works with the Live Well San Diego partners and residents and leadership team to make all of this a reality for residents. So we're very happy to have her here. We also have some of our fantastic board members who I want to acknowledge personally because they are incredible leaders and supporters for this, and without this here, wouldn't be possible. And we also have some of our advisory committee here today as well, so I want to say thank you to all of you. All right, so today what we're going to be doing is give you some background on Communities of Excellence, on the Communities of Excellence framework, and the experience of our first pilot communities, which are San Diego County, South Region, and Northwest Missouri. We're going to be focusing more today on San Diego County. And then finally, at the very end, I'm going to give you some information on our National Learning Collaborative, which will be starting in September, and there are still some great opportunities to be involved in that. Now, it is our belief that the best way to achieve sustainable high performance in our communities is to manage and improve a community as a system. We all know that we have deep and complex challenges in many of our communities today. Challenges that cannot effectively be addressed through what can seem at times like random efforts to tackle individual parts of what is a very complex problem. We believe that a systems approach to community improvement is needed, one which will be more effective at addressing issues such as community health, educational attainment, enhanced economic opportunity, and increased prosperity than our current approaches. Hence our hypothesis that the Baldrige framework, which we know drives performance excellence in businesses and organizations, can be modified to drive performance excellence in communities. And when I talk about communities, we're not talking about city government. City government is an aspect of your community, but we're talking about all the sectors that come together to help you live, work, play, raise children, to raise a family, live in a community. Now we focus on the 4 sectors that are listed here because we know that as a community you cannot achieve excellence by improving these in silos. Each of these sectors and others depending on your community, this isn't limited to just these 4 sectors, are independent and they cannot effectively be addressed on their own. Now here's a graphic of the adapted Communities of Excellence framework. Immediately you'll notice a couple differences. Some of the ones I want to point out, the very first one is community leadership. Now this is very different than in an organization because an organization has a CEO. And Anabel will touch a little bit more on their experience with that, but it is a critical difference and probably one of the most important components and important differences of what we do here. So I want to put forward to you our vision of a community of excellence. So if you would for just a minute, imagine the benefits to the residents, the businesses, and other organizations in the entire community that demonstrate the kind of excellence and processes and outcomes that we see in Baldrige Award recipients. Imagine a time when leaders within a community, both official leaders and informal leaders, work together to set a community vision, listen to community stakeholders to better understand community assets and community needs, allocate or reallocate resources to address community issues and advance community initiatives and the outcomes that they intend to impact, and engage, mobilize, and align people resources, the workers, volunteers, citizenry, on the initiatives that make a difference in a given community. That is how high-performing organizations succeed, and we believe that's how high-performing communities will succeed. It is because of this that we've developed a version of the Baldrige framework and assessment process that is appropriate for communities. Just like Baldrige guides the management of all components of an organization as a unified whole, the Communities of Excellence framework guides all components of a community as a whole. This framework can be applied to communities of any size or complexity, and like Baldrige, results and outcomes are critical. You have to measure something if you're going to improve it. You have to measure the right things, or you won't know if you are making progress on something that matters. And you can have very well-designed, efficient processes, but if they're not targeted towards the results you want, then you're not going to get where you want and where you need to be. Let's see. I want to give you a brief background on what Communities of Excellence and our progress. We started in 2010. We were founded by two former Baldrige Award-winning CEOs, one of whom is in the room, and the other one in this room right now. The other one is at home basking in the San Diego sunshine. But they, having experienced Baldrige to help transform their organizations, saw how it could potentially transform a community. And it's from that early conversation and that idea that this evolves. We became established as a nonprofit organization in 2013. And our partnership formally, the Baldrige program began in 2015. And since then, we've worked with the program and specifically with Ellen Garshik to help take the version of the Communities of Excellence framework that a small group of volunteer Baldrige experts and community experts had begun working on. And with the help of the Baldrige program, we put it more into alignment with the Baldrige Builder criteria. If you're familiar with that, it's more of a shortened version of the full framework, so fewer questions. And it's very much now consistent with Baldrige so that the assessment process can be consistent with Baldrige. Once we completed that draft in 2016, we then wanted to test it out first through focus groups and expert review, and then by implementing it in some communities that would be willing to work with us to help test it and refine it, give us feedback on the different approaches and what's working, and see, and then be able to further refine and modify the framework so that our end goal would be permanent adoption by the Baldrige program and inclusion as the seventh sector of Baldrige eligible for presidential level recognition, just like the other sectors that we're here today honoring. So our two pilot communities, San Diego County and the 18 counties of Northwest Missouri, have been wonderful volunteers to work with us. And it's through our experience with them that we decided that we were encouraged by the results and wanted to take this even farther and have developed a national learning collaborative of communities that will help us expand our reach across the nation to other communities and also allow these communities to work together to share best practices and share approaches. Now, just quickly, as I said, we have a solid draft of the framework. Our two pilot communities were intentionally very different, and we wanted to do that because we wanted to test this framework on communities at different levels of complexity, different size. So we have San Diego County, which is very much an urban area. The issues that they tend to be focusing on right now are more based on health issues right now. In the 18 counties of Northwest Missouri, you're talking about a very rural region, and their primary focus is on economic and opportunity and a transfer of wealth issue and a population loss. So like I said, two very different approaches, but both are developing a community profile. Both are developing shared community strategies, a common language, standard measurement practices, and a sustainable values-driven leadership teams. The first step on their journey is the community profile. Just like an organization, it serves as the context setting and asks about the unique factors specific to your community. It's intended to be the filter through which you and your community partners see and apply the criteria requirements. As expected, the relative importance of these requirements will vary from one community to the next, and this will depend on your shared identity, which I'll talk about in a second, environment, objectives, your community's shared vision, challenges, etc. But it is the starting point for your community excellence journey. It also serves as your community's first assessment. Like I said, I want to point out P1A0. I don't know if you can read that very well, but in community definition. Now, if you're a business or an organization, you tend to know why you're all coming to work that day. It's you make cars, or you make widgets, or you teach students, or whatever it is. But in a community, there's two different ways to look at this. There's your geographical definition, but there's also a shared identity. There's this question of why are you all coming together? And I'll talk about that more in just a minute, but I wanted to make sure that I point that out to you. So now I want to share with you a few of my lessons learned, having been able to go on this journey with San Diego County as they adopt this framework. The first lesson that I've learned is about language. I write here, language. When we were adapting this framework, we talked a lot about what kind of language to use, because we could have used more community-friendly language, but we made the decision to be more consistent with Baldrige and continue to try to use terms that were that related more to the Baldrige process. And that's been a really interesting challenge, and I think that it's something that was, for me, an early on lesson in terms of how to explain that to people. Some small examples is suppliers as a phrase is something that I don't think that communities think very much about. And so working through what that actually means was a big conversation. Things like partners. Live Well San Diego designates partner organizations, so they're called partners. In this, partner is a different word. And so having to communicate that, and also communicating that you don't have to answer every question, that you don't want to get stuck on something unless it's going to really add value to what you're doing. And so being able to communicate that process and the importance of the language, but also looking at it for what it is, which is a tool to help you, not something to get hung up on. Another one that I've seen is that the recognition levels that we've put together, which are very similar to the state recognition levels. So there's a tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And the first level, actually, communities can submit this September to submit their community profile, an example of a performance improvement system that they use to be eligible for our first level of recognition. And while it can be useful as milestones, it also becomes easy to forget exactly why you're doing this process, and oftentimes you can get focused on those dates. And so that was an early lesson for me. Another one is the challenge is understanding what this framework is and what it isn't. Much like Six Sigma or Lean is a tool and a tool belt, if you will. It addresses components of Aldridge. This is how we view initiatives like collective impact or the resiliency framework. These are all tools, and I would say the communities of excellence should be viewed as more of the tool belt. It's the umbrella for this community performance work that you're doing. So it allows the communities to select the tools that are best suited to them. It's not competing, it's complementary. And I think that that's been something that's often been a struggle to articulate to people as we go through this. Finally, the importance of the shared identity and what that means. There's many different approaches to each aspect of the COE framework, and there has to be a reason to bring everyone to the table. So, it was really interesting that I was talking with Ellen Garshik just a couple days ago, and we were talking about this question, because in Northwest Missouri, the shared identity is very straightforward for them. They know that they have incredible economic challenges. They know that they need to do something now. They know that they need to come together as a region to do it. And so I think that in that sense, they don't struggle with this as much as an area that is as large and complex as San Diego County is. And they're struggling with what is our shared identity, because it's hard to just sum that up in a few words. And what I found was interesting when I was talking to Ellen is she said, well, why don't you live in Los Angeles? I live in San Diego. And I kind of laughed. I'm from Los Angeles, so I don't have anything bad to say about it. But her point was really powerful to me because there is a reason I don't live in Los Angeles. There is a reason I live in my neighborhood that I live in. And if someone asks me, why do you live in the particular neighborhood you live in? It's because we all know each other. It's because it's friendly and it's inclusive. So there's reasons. And just that exercise of talking about it is something that we think is very valuable for communities. So I think there's a lot of important lessons that I'm learning, and these are all informing our journey to make this framework and make the criteria as helpful and as powerful as it can be for other communities as they begin to adopt this framework. So now I want to turn this over to Anabel